high school, right?
Yeah.
And I got it. I was just did that came up. So within that, with a lot of friends, not only within the pandemic, but just life itself. Grew up in an area that, just like a lot of areas, was very affluent in some of its areas, and as well rugged on some of its well. And it brought in a very diversified. And I say that's kind of how I got to where maybe you'll be today, interviewing me about how it developed. And that was the people that we grew up with all over and everything. And they were doing all types of things that led into a lot of different experiments for young people. And those people led into some of our friends. And some of those friends, unfortunately, throughout, even within the pandemic and other that had to succumb to things that are associated with that. And I kind of want to just to kind of emphasize that what I do or what I've done or what we will talk about really isn't about so much as a thing that is a drug to where people would want to think that I'm promoting or are saying in a way that could lead you into, possibly by personal choice, not saying that the actual cannabis itself did, but by personal choice into things. And our friends passed away from substance. And that namely was, in this case, was alcohol. Both of our friends died that he spoke about, and to the listeners, that they died from alcoholism and a complication in one form or another. Not necessarily alcohol itself killed them, but through their health issues that were developed because of alcohol, they died.
Yeah, I lost my best friend since kindergarten about 5 or 6 years ago to alcohol. It's a horrible, horrible fucking drug. And I was begging him. I'm like, man, why don't you just, because you smoke weed. I'm like, why don't you just smoke weed? His biggest concern was the federal government and his gun collection. He was very, very much into firearms and collecting firearms and stuff. And he was literally afraid that they would come in and take everything that he owned. So, his drug of choice remained to be alcohol.
Which is legal.
That same thing, Jim Belushi just came up. He's one of the larger growers now in the state of Oregon. And he recently came up and said that he has no doubt in his mind that his brother would still be alive today if he would be able to smoke cannabis. Other drugs took him, but he was medicating for severe brain trauma, but from when he was playing football back in the 50s and 60s and stuff. So yeah, I mean, alcohol is it's just a horrible, horrible substance. I'm not a real big fan.
Yeah, me neither. Well, folks, this is the Old Stoneys podcast. We're chatting.
We jumped right into it.
Yeah, we jumped right into it. We're chatting with Bret Bogue, the King of Kush. Can I still call you that, right?
That's what they, it's funny. I always think, when people say, how did that name come about? And I go, well, High Times came out in 2010, did a huge article. And on the front page of it's the California issue of the 2010
right.
High Times. It actually goes in. I'm the centerfold as well for the High Times magazine. But on the front, they wrote, I didn't do it. They when they came there, it was at Specialty Collective in LA. It's no longer there, right off of Brea. And on the walls, we had it tagged with one of the most famous artists at the time. One of the street artists we allowed him to come in, and they painted all of the walls and everything. And along the short, a lot of the Kush, different strains and things of that nature. And High Times came in to do the article, and it's inside that. You can pull up in their archives. It's about a 15-page article, and on the front page they wrote, and they're like, Brad, go look. They wrote. The new King of Kush, and that's what they gave me. They gave me that name. So I mean, like a marketing ploy, and just like we are here on radio. We're talking live on live stream. You have to look at this now. We're in a new millennium, and I'm telling everyone, it's like, listen, a new language was born 13 years ago. Okay, and more than that, if we'll go back to when we were kids. Another language was born, and that was really the internet. And if you take those two in combination, so about 40 and about 13, right? Where we have transformed, especially in our generation, everything's transformed. So if you're not willing to get on what is that, and I tell everyone now, and I won't go too far off the rabbit hole here. Everyone, and I always tell people all the time, look at it this way. If you are trying to get on the worldwide highway and you could get on it for free, and I could get you on a worldwide highway for free for every eye, every ear, everything that you could ever think of, right? They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, what I just gave to you was, of course, the internet. And as long as you're willing to understand how to drive that highway and get on the highway, you have the #1 mouthpiece in the world. And as long as you can adapt that. And how do I tell them? Just imagine this. When you get on the highway, what type of car? Well, everyone has those cars. So how do you bling out? Well, it's got to be by your wheels, by your tint, or by your stereo, or the color of it. So you're thinking the same way while you're trying to advertise your company on the highway. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, when it comes to, it does say, I'll have to cheat a little bit. I did check your LinkedIn because we hadn't chatted in a while. And it does talk about your skills in SEO and negotiation and a few other things. And that, that is like stuff that's just invaluable as far as I'm concerned, stuff that, especially in this industry, right? You got to know how to maneuver, especially in social media, because I've had accounts shut down, with tons of followers, and there's other accounts that never get shut down and they have 5 million followers, it's like,
I think, now let's say that side jogging verbiage, what is put out, how it's put out. And then when I say the side jogging, you have to, this kind of side, but I know it to be true. About 2000, probably 12, 13, 14, then about 2012 or 2013, I was in a meeting, and today, not today. Anyways, it's in Long Beach. Southern California, in Ladera Ranch, and it's a media company, and that media company had no other than Snoop Dogg in a meeting, and they were pitching them about making a deal and everything, right? And there, right around that time, was a thing called, you guys will get it. This is such an awesome story. A thing called Instagram, okay? But Instagram really wasn't much. It was just some buddies, okay, some kids from California. Okay, cool. So they come to Snoop. Yo, this is the greatest story. So they're in this executive meeting and they're having a puff, and Snoop just lights up and they're all suit and ties with my buddies in Orange County. And they're like, what? They're like, no, just let him puff, let him puff.
Right. You gotta get stop them.
And they're trying to pitch him a deal on a stock deal, right? And so they're pitching the deal, and then Snoop, all of a sudden, he's listening to the deal and he's like, yo, this sounds like, and I got to think about this deal. And then he busts into the deal of the kids coming to him with this new idea for this thing called Instagram. And he's like, yo, all what I want is in the paper bag. I want to be paid by the paper bag. And he's telling him the story. He's like, I'm listening to this. The dude's hilarious. I wasn't there, but my buddy was telling me, he's like, once he's all done, the kids, basically, they handed him. And what it was him to just push out and be this kind of voice or whatever for this multimedia play, right? Kind of how they always do this influencer type of thing. Well, what he messed up what he wanted and what he should have did, and what he told her was like, I should have just took it. They were offering him, I think at the time, I heard a number like 25%.
Oh,
yo, yeah, exactly.
Man,
I got you guys. And it was while he was saying, because he's like, yo, what I learned and that was something that I learned a lot about, and you guys said, social media and the play, and what it is it's the gateway. And what I realized is that within that gateway, there's ways to go around it. And himself showed me by his personal loss. Snoop Dogg's worth maybe 150 once. I say maybe, I wish, worth 150, $1 million, okay? But literally, he could have in one move, he could have surpassed his whole career, his whole life, and it would have been super over. Off just by, I'll take that. And sometimes you're not fully grasping it. So the industry now has moved into a different millennium. I've got systems to where now I never have to grow, touch, extract, manufacture anything. I got a license, manufacturing, multimedia and a packaging play with what the world needs. And you drop it in an SOP completely with everything else into all of those other operations with the largest mouthpiece. 4.4 billion people a second can hear me speak.
Yeah, that's
And
yeah.
I never have to
Okay.
use, and I never have to use any, here it is, because I'll tap it. I don't want to go too far. You could, when it goes to Canada or wherever, a Canopy, a Tilray, an Aurora, where they cannot use, like the guy behind you, where you have Tommy Chong, you can't use the name of the celebrity. They can't sell it like that, okay?
Yeah.
But what they could do, and what could be very easy with a licensing deal through a social influencer, that social influencer is the only one that's tied to, with an NFT, certain genetic that everyone wants in the world, that then gets dropped off at the huge MSOs. They take what is the incubator. The incubator is the think tank. None of these cannabis companies, none of them have, and it doesn't make sense. You want to play with the big boys, but you don't build an incubator think tank, a training center for your people. Every Fortune 500 company that I've ever known has it. And if you don't have it, you're not going to be a Fortune 500. Get the, you know what I mean, out of here.
Get out of
They're
here.
not ever going to be. And if you already watch who already is coming in the back door, there was a $6 billion deal done by Pfizer to buy a little tiny crack in the hall cannabis company here just in California. There's another $7.8 billion deal that just got sold, that was GW Pharmaceutical. And there's already JW, the smoking, the cigarettes. They have over a 4,000 light system right now in Detroit, Michigan. They have over 200,000 acres in Mendocino County. So what I'm trying to say is the billionaires are already here. If you go look at even Oregon, where you guys are based out of, you'll see right now that the numbers of declining people in the cannabis industry are falling like flies in a flying SWAT contest.
It's pretty
the same thing's happening around the whole United States. So we developed a program that we don't have to have. We have more or less what I consider, we have the largest multimedia platform for any brands in the world that allow for fluent transparency as a record deal. And the record deal would allow for perpetuity of not only the actual physical product that we never grew, but the artist itself never had to put his name on it. I don't need your name. You're the brand already, MC Hammer. Let's deliver the prize.
Yeah.
So if we realize and we ride the highway to the gateway of the money-making machine, everyone gets paid. Anyways, all right.
Well, I had a question for you, because we're taking a look at a lot of these larger brands, and I'm always constantly kind of going to like Seed Source and trying to trace some of these genetics. The first cannabis cup that went off, I think, launched a lot of strain, mortifications that we've seen that we're actually smoking on today. But I'm kind of curious, what happened with that first cannabis cup? I sure as hell wasn't there, but
So a lot of the players that, from what I could understand, my very good friend is, and again, I would like, when I tell a story, I'm going to tell you from the words that I got from, I think, and you'll make sense here. But then again, we all tell stories how we tell stories. So always within that, give everyone their fair story. But I will tell you how my story is. My story, I think, holds the biggest breadth of all stories. So here we go.
Here we go.
Okay. So the story goes as follows. My friend Stephen Hagar, which is the founding a member, and he created the Cannabis High Times Cannabis Cup in 1985. But before that, he scouted the area. He was scouting it 2 or 3 years before. How do I know all this? Because I can call him right now. We can get him on this interview and he'll tell you everything that I'm telling you.
That's cool.
Because I don't tell a story unless I have factual information.
That's refreshing.
I am the story.
Yeah.
So, okay. So anyway, so here we go. Be fair. I don't want to be cocky either. I want to give respect. I do want to respect everyone. And that's why I led it to everyone has a voice. Everyone may interpret it different, but I'll tell you from what told. So
I've been
here we
there,
go.
brother.
Right. You just need to be fair. And you guys are on radio, you're on the show, everything else can be so misconstrued on what it is, and you could they'll say he overleaped and he overspoke. Okay. I'm then putting a disclaimer in. I'm only just saying for what I know from personal hand experience and the story that how I saw it.
Right.
Job bless. Okay. So I meet Steve and everything. And it's interesting, you know, when I meet Steve I don't meet Steve until probably about 2000, maybe. Okay. And by that time, he had already kind of lost his position and then grabbed his position back from High Times, because there's a lot, you know, that I could dive into. I was friends with the original Versat. I know how it got started, the monies and everything. I know about High Times and Normal. I know about the night that Versat killed himself and how Versat's wife ended up calling the attorney. That attorney was no other than Mr. Kennedy, which became the owner of High Times. What? Yaja Rastafari.
Wow.
So anyways, I know more stories about this industry than anyone has known about this industry. I am the industry from the beginning to the end, because I'm the gatekeeper of the truth. So once Steve says he gets that cup going, and little did Steve know that he was going to be, as you said, and I agree, there were a lot of genetics that would come out of that. But as we were talking before I started the show, a lot of those genetics, the story would be told to all of us here on here in America about Ben Jonkers. I'm butchering his last name. That's not how you pronounce his last name. He's the owner of Sensi C. Also, they would talk about Neville Schumacher, a great friend of mine. Okay. And they would talk about these people. They would also talk about Shanti Baba. And then they would talk about, of course, a strain that you're going to be talking about, Positronics. And they would talk about a gentleman named Skunk, and not Skunk, but Skunk Man, but Watson. So all these things, you know, would come up and they would come into play. That's great. And that's how one would come from a story that we would hear from a magazine that would want us at the time, young and naive, as Steve would say, because I had to become the proof seeker for Steve. Steve wasn't on the side of the world to understand that. He was only reporting what was put out in front of him, right? And the people that were willing to really take a risk at that time to kind of come out, right? Now, that doesn't mean that in the sense of what the truth or what it was, or the person that first came, who invented electricity, who invented the first telephone, who invented it, you guys, and you'll know what I mean, because we've been told it was Jefferson, or we were told it was this or that. Facts is that's not who did it. Who invented the whole internet and everything like that? Oh, we say it's Bill Gates and everything, but boy, have we seen the backstories about that.
Yeah.
So the cannabis industry is filled with that. So now let's get right to the top. So the genetics and everything, those genetics were a lot came from, but let's just use what was the winner of that year, 1985, and that Positronics was kind of the key winner. Of course, Schumacher and Sensi and everything, they had some stuff that they were coming out with. But where did a lot of that come from? Well, they gave us a few stories that they lead us to believe that it would have been from the travels that they did as people or young people or wherever they did or wherever they went. But they failed to tell everyone, they failed to write in the books, they failed to write in the magazines, the truth. And I can send everything because I have it documented. And it was the early trips that started in 1979. And that 1979 trips were with the young gentleman, Ed Rosenthal. And he brought an older man. He happened to be 69 years old at the time when he took him there. The old man that he took there. And there was no legalism. There wasn't any of that going on. And he shows up there, and that cat shows up, and you know where that cat was from? Grants Pass, Oregon.
Oh.
And his name was Old Ed. And he was a merchant marine. And he had some kids that were going to college in San Francisco, and you wouldn't believe who their classmate was. Ed Rosenthal.
I was just gonna say Ed.
World.
So Wall was rocking and socking and docking. Ed's out playing and doing his thing. Ed's great. They're great. But Ed really his basis of who he is. And it really is not necessarily Ed. It's actually his wife, Jane. His wife, Jane, was an accomplished grower in the late 60s and early 70s. She probably was the one that helped finance to get him through college.
Yeah.
While he was going to school. How do I know that? Well, one of the great managers of all time, Mike Keisha, out of New York originally, and then ended up in San Diego, was no other than the manager for Toots and the Mythals for 27 years. We went from the Rolling Stones to every show, to every party you could think of. It was like no other, with Keith, Mick, and everyone sitting and partying with everyone. It was a great nines and great times. Those cats, that cat, and that's how it all went down. So all those people, and one day I'm hanging out. I might be going too far on this, but it's a great history. And if you guys can cut it up and then make it.
Oh no, this is like doing it live. So just keep going. Right. I'm loving it.
So the story of rocks is that one day I'm with Keisha and I'm talking about, I met this guy, blah, blah, blah. And it will lead into the whole story about how I know about Ed, and the whole story about Sensi, and the whole story about genetics. And as you asked, the first cup in 85. So now, rock and roll, fast forward, I'm in Jamaica partying with Mike Keisha, and everything's cool. And the next thing you know, he's like, let's go meet. Yeah, man, let's go down and see Toots to the studio and we'll jam. And so we're down there and we go out, we're just chilling it. And next thing you know, we're all talking about it. And I'm like, yo, I got to go see Ed. I got to go down and do something with Ed except for the Seattle Hemp Fest. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Oh, man, Ed and Jane, you want to know a story? And I'm like, what? And he's like, bro, we're doing the show in 77, 78. We're down in the Castro, down in San Francisco, man. Roll up at this bar. I'm fucking in this bar. The next thing you know, bro, motherfucker, come on out. And I got this guy from Jamaica, bro. And we're doing a show with Toots, bro. We're rock and roll. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. And so we're down there. We're all doing it. And I go to this corner and see all these people, and he goes, Brett, back then people were just smoking and everyone was so different, just open, right? I'm like, wow. He goes, dude, this is a different place. So these people are smoking. He goes in there and they start smoking on the bud. And this guy's like, oh, well, I got good weed. And it was Ed Rosenthal. I got good weed. And Mike's like, you don't got good weed, bro. I got good weed. And he had all the weed from Jamaica and everything, right? So he hits him up with the weed. After that, boom, buddy. So then he's like, hey, well, I'm Toots in the Mountain. What? Come back to my place. You got to meet my girlfriend. Oh my God, she's gonna love to meet you people. This is awesome. I'm going to college. I'm writing books. So the next thing you know, my buddy shows up. I could only imagine, dude. I could only imagine this. This is a rock star story. Rolls up onto the dude's house, knocks out the thing, goes on in, and then it's Ed Rosa. Open up the door. Boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, it's Jane, dude. He said Jane comes out, and he says he's never met a woman that was so knowledgeable about cannabis, the growth, how to grow it, what to do, why to do it. And he's looking at her going, what the what? And he was so blown away. He was so amazed. So, that's just kind of a sidebar story. So back to the story. So all of a sudden, Steve, he's all kind of, dude, Steve he's such a blessing, but so naive. So fast forward now, and some deals start happening in the world. Now you have to think about this. In 1985, 1984, there was a huge bust in Santa Cruz, California. It was one of the largest busts in the history of our country when it came into indoor growing.
Wow.
I didn't know.
Oh, yes, it
How
was.
bust was that?
Well, that happened to be a gentleman named Watson.
Huh. I haven't heard
Skunk
that.
number one.
Oh, now that I have heard of.
Okay. So now wait a minute. Watch this. And so for 1984, you guys, and you have to think about it the year, you have to think about America. Go look at the laws, think about what we had going on. Think about you growing cannabis inside. Think about what you have in a sophisticated system enough that when the Santa Cruz sheriff shows up, they think they went into a laboratory from outer space. Okay. But when they see the laboratory of outer space, they really see that is somewhat of an outer space laboratory. Why? International shipping records of a breeding process all around the world.
I'm sure that piqued their interest a little bit.
So
They didn't even know what
immediately,
they were looking at, probably.
they had no idea at first, but soon enough, what did they do? They turned it over to who? The
Oh,
DEA.
our federal buddies, yeah.
So the DEA picked it up. That's a fact. And then from there, so then now think about it. How is it then the next year that our boys win in the first Cannabis Cup?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
not, again, like I had a prelude into the story. I had a prelude into how you speak or you talk about people. I tell people to go find facts. So I'll speed up a few things and within the facts. Within those genetics and things like that, that said that they've went on, as you just indicated, to go on and spawn a lot of different things. And they have. But in the thoughts and the regions that a lot of those genetics first came from, the gentleman out of Grants Pass. Because by the way, when he was brought there in 1979, he brought genetics that he gave to while being a merchant marine, traveling around in the 60s and 70s, while his child then met Ed Rosenthal. Well, then he took old Ed to Amsterdam in 1979, and where they gave and went to all of those people before any of those places were even set up. And he gave them all of those genetics that I'm speaking of. Those genetics would include 11 land races. 11 land races are not only the map of the human mankind and humanity as far as our existence, but they map out the existence of all genetics that have created all the genetics. They're the master keys to the cars that are being driven today.
Wow.
And those 11 drive those. So it's very important that people know that. And then, so from that 85, then went on to spawn a lot of stuff. But, you know, today we have a mishmash of a lot of different stuff that, frankly, out of those 11, really are 5. Those 5 are as followed: OG Kush, Chem Dog, Sour Diesel, Grape Ape, which is GDP. It's the exact same strain. I gave it to Ken Estes. He didn't get it from the nation. That's not real. He did get it from me when we were up at Eddie Lepp's place. And last but not least is the Haze. Those 5 strains, which were made from the 11 that I spoke about, are now the faces, which in a new kind of, if we'll call, I'm using as a cross, the fist.
Yeah.
The crosses, the phenotypes that really, when we can run the game. From all the Cookie Crew, the Runts, the Gelatos, the Sherberts, the Gary Paytons, the Surma, really, as far as I'm concerned, 1 or 2 really strains, maybe 3, are all 5 or 6. And they're just different phenotypes. Most people don't understand. They smell it with the gases. That's the OG. Then they smell it with or they see with the purple. That's the grape ape. That's what you're smoking. That's what you're doing. So a lot of people just, it's so kind of convoluted, and the stories and everything. And that's where it comes back to, you know, I hate to say it, but it's true reporting, getting deep into the people. Not, I hate to say it, but it's true with all that. You can't just, man, look at that. That's the scene. It's made it, and that's who it is. I'm here and I'm listening. Well, it's so easy. And we're talking about it now, how you can use the highway to kind of just with the right social media person, the narrative can change just so quick. And all of a sudden, well, wait, that's that. No. And one of the companies that you could do, and, you know, I hope you guys don't mind, but we got to, and this is in the media, so hopefully it's not too bad, but it's a company that hasn't been around more than 8 years and somehow got an evaluation of $552 million. It's not right. It's disheartening. It's disrespectful. It's dishonest. And so that company, and they started, Justin, here you go, watch this one. They started in Seattle, and they had to choose a name that only made sense to them. And as I draw the picture, you'll work with me. I like to be like a Riddler that likes to give the truth. So the riddle truth will be, they start in Seattle as attorneys. They open up a company called Privateer. They then have a great idea in 2014 to get on a plane. They show up on a little island known to all of us as Jamaica Mon. There they have, and they go and they think that they've hit the jackpot. In some ways they have. they go on to the Marley family and they go and they convince them to do without really looking at it. Because by the way, sidebar, it's patented Marley or trademarked Marley Natural Spirits. So they go in, they make a deal with the Marleys for the Marley brand. They come out with that Marley brand. They raise some ungodly hundreds of millions of dollars off the name. They take that money as a power play and they go in and they buy an LP in Canada. That LP becomes Tilray, their Tilray. So
No.
then, so wait. This is where your listeners and you and everyone else have to learn the deceitfulness, but yet a tool that you yourself could be just as powerful. So here we go. They then say to themselves in the middle of the night, yo, we're like Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. We're in the fucking Zaire, man, and this is the real one. But we got him, and we're Muhammad Ali. We got him on a rope-a-dope move. We're going to come out now. And here it is. There's the stopper. We're going to come out with a company, and that company's being a social media company, and that company's going to be called Leafly.
Wow.
That's
okay. That's a fucking small world.
Okay, guys.
Wow.
And so now what they've done is they've been able to manipulate the brains of the midgets on Earth. That's the 99% of the masses. To ride on the largest roller coaster that your mind can gather and ride you all the way to the backwards brain of the brain. And that's what they just did in less than 8 years.
Wow.
And
So
the fact that we have a documented 10,000 year history with this plant. I mean, we can go all the way back into ancient China and see different types of recipes and concoctions that are involved with the cannabis plant. And this has been a journey symbiotic with mankind for, I mean, hundreds of thousands of years.
well, how about this one? It's what's been proven. So I think they say mankind 100 and something, maybe million, and that's the Homo sapien, okay? Maximum, okay? That's what that's so far. And we know that changes a lot. Do you know that the cannabis and hemp, 270, I think 270 or 240 million years. So cannabis, by the way, and hemp has been longer here living as a DNA atom on this planet longer than we have.
Yeah.
So, and that's
this isn't the first plant that man has manipulated to the point where we can't even recognize it anymore. You take a look at corn, and down in when they first started, it was a monocotyledon. It was a blade of grass that they actually had figured out how to breed into maize. And now we take a look at it now, and you can still follow the genetics all the way back to where it started. But this plant, we are constantly recreating it and using these crosses. And again, we're stepping on the backs of other people that have been prosecuted, persecuted, and now these guys are stepping on their bones saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to be an $8 billion company now. And, hooray, look at me, all the work that I did. And I don't know. There's just some appropriations that I think we need to at least recognize.
Did we lose Bret? Are you still there, Bret?
Oh, God, we lost Bret.
We got a little frozen action. Oh, no, we lost him. Maybe he'll come back. Oh, no. We've been chatting with Bret Bogue, the King of Kush. I guess that gives me a second to jump in here. It's interesting to hear some of those stories. I mean, man, talk about a plethora of information. Having a guy like Bret Bogue being able to chat with him when we wanted to chat with him about something is definitely worthy of the Zoom call. Man, I can't believe we just lost him. I'm kind of bummed. That happens sometimes.
I know it happens sometimes.
Well, since maybe we'll try to get him back here. I wanted to ask him so many more questions, so hopefully maybe he'll.
I know this could almost be like a 2-hour show, easy.
Yeah,
we gotta at least have.
So we can take a quick little break and do Munchies of the Week. It's time for Munchies of the Week. Okay, pause for a second. All right, Matt. As we wait for Bret to hopefully reconnect to us here shortly, I gotta say, I haven't really been eating a lot of crap lately. We talked about this last episode, but I found something in the grocery store that I just can't believe existed. I didn't know it existed. I'm glad it exists, and I had to buy like 2 boxes of it, and that's cinnamon toast churros instead of cinnamon toast crunch, or it's cinnamon churros, and they're like little tiny mini churros. They're so delicious, man.
I tell you,
and they even come in a chocolate one too.
The greatest invention for stoners ever has got to be the air fryer.
The air fryer.
Like crispy stuff, you like crunchy stuff. I mean, last night my wife cracked out. I came in from smoking and I kind of like air fryers running. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm making some appetizers. We had crab and shrimp rangoons last night. They were absolutely fucking fantastic, man. And I just love getting that kind of, I do sweets, but for me, it's more like greasy, fatty. I like that kind of stuff when I'm really, really high.
That stuff that really clogs the arteries.
Really something, yeah. I mean, when I go for it, I go for it.
Yeah.
But yesterday.
Chicken wings in the air fryer, side note, chicken wings, the chicken wings, making hot wings in the air fryer is awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Just about making anything in an air fryer is amazing.
I'm trying to get Bret back. So, there we go. Let's see if we can get him back in here now.
All right. You do your thing.
Well, yeah.
What did I do yesterday? Oh, hey, I went skiing yesterday. We got to get you back up there. Oh, we're getting him.
There he is. Technical difficulties. The government heard us talking.
The government shut their ass down. They're like, nope.
We're all so funny because we're all doing the same. That's it, buddy. That's exactly. I'm like, oh, they heard us too much. It was too much. Click, click.
We come back. There's a black bag over his head. He's getting dragged down. I'm like, oh shit.
Well, before we lost you, after we lost you, we went ahead and did our segment Munchies of the Week, which is cinnamon toast churros this week, which is always delicious.
I kind of like that. Yeah.
What's your favorite munchie? What's your favorite munchie, Bret?
Well, first of all, I have a very low tolerance to edibles, but I like chocolates. So, or some gummies. I think we all do.
I meant more on the line of after you get high and you get the munchies. What do you
munchies.
What do you go?
My go-to. I'm gonna go with a Snickers. I'm gonna go with a Mounds, or I'm gonna go with a Payday.
There you go.
Or Reese's. Could be Reese's too, but I got a sweet tooth. I definitely.
Those are all just absolutely awesome. You've been in the cannabis industry for a really long time. When did you really decide to make it your living? I know you had a battle with cancer early on in your life, correct?
Yeah.
And you beat that motherfucker, right?
Yeah. It was it was
Well, I know this because you went to your high school reunion, and a friend of mine said they saw you and you looked great and all this stuff, and they said you smoked that shit out. So you did. Which I found amusing, but I was like, I'm glad he beat it. No,
that's exactly. It was life changing. I think a lot of times, as we were talking earlier, when we are raised in an environment, drugs, alcohol, a lot of things come in.
Yeah,
I was definitely prone to that. I had an addiction, and that took a lot of my personality and my ability to do and achieve things as a human being. It took it away from me. It literally did. But within that, maybe that's what sometimes, always, cancer was the greatest thing that ever happened to me ever. I'll take it 10 more times. You can give it to me 100 times. Thank you. And I know that sounds crazy, and people look at you like, Jesus, Bret, I've lost people. Yep, I've lost a lot of people from cancer. It's hardcore. But for me personally, it made me look inside to reach out that life is very short. Life is not, you take it for granted, you'll be dead tomorrow. And when I started looking at that, it really changed a lot of perspective. Got to a point one day, Justin, you know this, I had kids in high school. So by a freshman, I had a child, and by a senior, another child. So I had 2 kids by the time I graduated high school. And so within that, and I had a huge drug and alcohol problem. And wasn't going much places other than a fucking probably to be a loser, really. Hate to say it, a loser with a personal choice that, was choosing it, whatever, choices or not, I was living it.
Right.
I got to a point, and I'll kind of leave it at that, that one simple thing was that it got to a point where it's like, hey, you're wasting away, your months, your years or whatever. And that one day, you guys, and it was heavy. I started looking around and I remember the kids and I was like, well, months, 2 months, 4 months, hike. And, you're counting like that. And all of a sudden one day I was like, well, fuck, break it down to days, break it down to whatever. So an average man lives 80 years, right? 29,400 days. So all of a sudden now changed everything about my life, changed everything how I live, changed everything of what I do, changed the time and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. I don't necessarily, if there's a rule, if I'm not hurting anyone and I know that there's benefits to help other people in life, I'm breaking every law known to mankind. I'll break the law. I'm breaking it. Yeah. And so that was the willingness then, as you said, Justin, long-winded in, but that's how I did it. Mm-hmm. I was like at the time, because that's how it became. It was still not even a matter of fact of being legal, right? Because you were still borderline of, well, you're going to be these medical people and you're going to do this medical collective thing and, right. And you can't make money and you can't do this and you can't do that. But what the fuck? If you run a business and you do everything else, how do you know you can't make money? That's insane. So you're asking us to help people for free and ask us to spend all of our money but not make any money. That was the day that I realized I needed to kind of make that transition. And I needed to understand, and that was within the laws that were written, i.e., member-only clubs, associations, as far as collective club and members that now have an orderly of legal fashion and member accountability that now is ran through that. So then that led me into then saying, okay, well, then there are legal within the system, the country that I live in, providing the medical system that they've given me, I can now enter into a model of a collective cooperative business model. And that's how I got into it. And that was about, I think probably really like pushing probably about 2000 out of California.
Yeah.
About 2099 or 2000. And it was really from another guy that we knew, a guy named Neil Smith.
Yeah, Neil Smith. That's cool, man.
He went on to do some other things as well in the cannabis industry.
That's awesome. I was poking around apothecarygenetics.com, seeing what kind of genetics you have offering nowadays. You got quite the selection going on. How long have you been doing the seed stuff? Because it's just now kind of, I think, taking off here in Oregon. And we used to sell seeds at our shop that Matt and I worked at together. But not every shop sells. Yeah, not every shop sells seeds. But it's nice to be able to do that. I mean, I'm looking at your list and I'm seeing Tangy on your list, and that's one of my all-time favorites. I just love Tangy. It's the only seed I can really choke down.
It's funny, about some of these strains, as we start to, this one. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, in 2001, 2002, I brought the Tangy Kush. So if you think about the year that I just said,
yeah,
and if you think about some other things, then that's like, well, what did you just say, Brett? Yep, that's right. So and gave it all over, passed it all up in Humboldt and Mendo, all to everyone. And then at what is it, 2014 or 16? All of a sudden now this what? You guys are smoking rock. But anyways, that's a whole nother story. But they know that they know they're fake. Sometimes you just have to call them out. It's like when I gave them the chocolate. When I gave them the chocolate came from our biker friends in Amsterdam. And our friend from the U.S. is their head electrician for all of the people in Amsterdam. So, and my brother, when we lived there, I lived there in Dom Square and out in Heidelberg and a few other spots. I had like 4 houses in Amsterdam for like 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Anyways, while living there, we used to do and help out so many people and so many grows. So a lot of our genetics, like we brought the Alaskan Thunderfuck, we brought the Pez, we brought the 2 other strains that we brought there from Washington. We brought the Goo from, basically the Gig Harbor, the Goo. And then we brought a bunch of stuff and just dotted it up. And it just, sometimes, I don't know. Anyways, I'll go into dead horse. It's such a beautiful thing to see the genetics and to kind of see how they've opened up. And right now, the pool and what I'm saying and where I'm going is that the genetics themselves, there needs to be a retool. A lot of these just come up with names and then put it on something and go wherever. It needs
Absolutely.
to, it just needs to, there was a study that was done. Again, these are all your readers or listeners can go. This was by Newsweek and by Time Magazine, and they sent out their best of the best, and they went out and they're like, what's pushing, what's dropping, what's hitting, how's the market kind of going, what's driving it, and they're going, well, it's weird. You got all these like names, and people are chasing these names, or whatever. So they go out and they got it all right.
Yeah.
The funny thing, what they did, you guys, they tested it all.
All the same shit.
It's all the same shit, you guys. They're name robbing them. So it's like they need to, and they put it out, I think, good for the industry to go, hey guys, you got to stop. You got to start learning a little bit about what it is. If you like wines, you like this, you like that. Okay, great. Well, then get into that and use the passion. There's nose, there's smell, there's taste, and there's really the feel, what they would call the high. But isn't that the relaxation?
Yeah.
Isn't that the treatment?
Matt and I
the
talk
high-
about this constantly about, I'm in it for taste, flavor, and feel. I like those things, just like when I have a beer or I have a glass of wine or a steak, those types of things. What cultivar did you won the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam, correct? What cultivar did you win with?
So yes, I did win. We've won the Cannabis Cup 5 different times.
I was kind of talking about the first time you won.
Well, the first time we won for a High Times Cannabis Cup.
Yeah.
And I've won 5 first place Cannabis Cups.
Absolutely.
In 3 countries and 2 states.
I love that.
I was the first American to ever win with my company based in the United States in Europe.
Wow.
Ever. And that was in 2007. And that was for a strain that I named after my daughter called Kaya Kush. I grew that in Mendocino County in Ukiah in my garage. You can look on YouTube and see the video. And then I entered that after sending it through the mail at the Cannabis Cup, where I took 187 people. I brought 3 bands, Honky Tonk Homesite, which is a string cheese incident. And I brought them a Pyrex. Also, I paid for Redman to show up. Anyways, it was an awesome show, and we won the Cannabis Cup that year. And that was Kaya Kush, OG Kush, crushed with Super Silver Haze that I got from Neville.
Wow, that's awesome. What's next for Apothecary Genetics? We talked a lot about the past and all that good stuff. What's next? What direction are you moving?
We are, as I was talking earlier, all the stuff, this or that or whatever. You know what? And this might be great for your listeners. We've had so much, I don't like to call them losses or failures. We've had so much lessons. That lesson has taught us how to lose about $30 million cash
Wow.
in the last probably 15 or 20 years. And in that learning process, again, like I like to triumph over my greatest lessons, it's been the greatest lesson I could have ever done. One thing that I've learned is that the money is nothing, only a tool, and it causes way more problems than it ever should. All the time while we look out in the window and we worry about and we think about ourselves of what we didn't do or why we should have done it. All what you should do is look at your young children and your wife and think about everything that you have, which is the most valuable thing you'll ever have. Nothing means nothing. That means everything. And so when I realized that, that became the day that I realized I'm not going to waste my time or my life anymore for anything else other than them. I don't want to do anything else other than them. And it's not about money or my so-called fame anymore. Those accomplishments have come and passed. and my time is a different place. So what have I done? And just as I started this interview today, I figured out how to ride the greatest mouthpiece of all time. That's social media. I have over 4 billion listeners at my fingertips at any one time I push a button. Within that, I realize now that if I have that, I have, as we were talking about my genetics and what I've done, I also realized that the kids have already went and kind of pushed that aside to a certain point. Case in point, you can go to licensings that were done by Canopy, which is owned by Constellation Brands.
Yep.
Major firings happened. What? Well, before all those companies went public, I was a consultant to them. I told them that what they should do and how they should run their business. They told me they were Fortune 500 people and they knew everything, and that I didn't know how to run any type of that business. They are correct. They are correct. But what they're not, and what they did and they misunderstood, was the plant itself and how to grow the plant and how to do it. Lastly was this: no matter what, anyone could pretty much grow as long as you know the basics of what it is and produce. Cool. But the last part of it is, who's buying it? When I explained that to them and they didn't listen to me, using all the publicly money because they could go out and buy and be the biggest thing that they wanted to be. By the way, they did do that. Great for them. But unfortunately, they were backed by public money. That public money was drawn by falsities and dreams that could not be realities. It's called sales, my friends. And
Oh
when
yeah.
you can't sell anything, you'll take losses. What happened? They lost combined about 75 billion. Oh, that's right, $1 billion.
Yeah.
Now, I could have saved 75 billion for Canada and all the investors if you would have had a king like me step in the door, because I would have been nice, honest, and respectful. And so what I've done with that long-winded, again, I'm like a wizard, you guys. Uh, that what I've done is that I said, I'm going to take all that in one package. I'm going to be able to provide all of that with the largest marketing tool in the world, with the brand that already is the most popular, already put out there. So what did they do? They created all the advertising for you for free. Thank you. I have the 4 billion mouthpiece to shoot out to the free advertisement. And now what we do is plug and play everywhere you want. You can't stop us. We're the
No.
biggest brand in the world. So, and that's all I'm going to do. Now, it's not Apothecary per se. Has nothing necessarily to do with Apothecary. It's me and what you were talking about earlier, the SMO,
Yeah.
all of that kind of put together in the business, and then understanding our back end is now through multimedia. Through the multimedia play, we're creating our own cryptocurrency, our own whole metaverse, our own everything that will then tie into through concerts, bands, music, everything will tie into it. And instead, now everything will be tied on a community basis based off the value. And everything will be based off a value of ultimately the value of water. Because our whole deal will start and end with the development of hydrogen fuel and capturing hydrogen credits and producing what will be in the near future. Will be probably not be here, but in 2050 will be 60% of Earth will be ran on hydrogen fuel. 60% cars,
Wow.
countries, and world. There's currently over $70 billion of sales ready to go. And you can look at the largest companies in certain areas, such as, or, damn it, dude. Every time too many people are hitting me up, I feel bad.
Losing him again.
Yeah, I'm right here, you guys. I apologize. Yeah,
Well, we're
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, you're a popular dude, man. I get it.
We got a couple minutes left, just 2 minutes left here in the podcast for today. Of course, we've been chatting with Bret Bogue. I like to call him the King of Kush, and longtime friend. And before we let you go, we just like to ask people normally, what are you smoking? What are you smoking on the regular?
I like, because we've been smoking so long. I tell your listeners, I started smoking when I was 12 years old. So I always love a heavy OG, Chem Dog, or a sour diesel. Love all the new flavors of the combination of the strains, the hybrids, the cookies, or gelatos, things of that. Just love a taste, right? Because I like the taste.
Right.
But ultimately, to really tee it off, I like concentrates. I've smoked for so long that the flowers, every once in a while, are great to kind of switch it up. But to be 24/7, I'd rather smoke concentrates. I love dabbing. I just love the direct one hit punch wonder.
Me too.
And it's just, I like it. It seems to be what I'm looking for when I do it is again, taste, smell, but I really want the high. If anyone was going to ask me the truth, I just want to boom out. I want to be out.
When
I
you
want to
dab,
relax.
when you
Going
dab
out.
for BHO, do you like rosin better than others, or do you like, what do you like?
Okay. Yeah, so here, this kind of go deep on you guys, but it's so true. So there's a maximum minimum. You guys, have ever played around and you hit a lighter, right? With a butane. So federal law mandates 80 BTU. Okay. Now the reality of it is that if you go in a pharmaceutical and you go and you take, because you asked, what with your readers and listeners, and they want to know about the best in the health. All the states have mandated the 80 ppm. I meant to say ppm, parts per million, not BTU, ppm. That allows, and it would pass for the test for all of the impurities, the solvents that are left in it, the solvents. So the federal is 10%. So, and that's unbelievable. So you can use hexane, entane, and things of that nature, and that could make a pharmaceutical grade medicine using what would one go, oh, I don't want that. Oh, you put the Shaka Zulu in me. Well, based off medical pharmaceutical grade, you would know that. Now, my preference, what I like, rosin's great because it seems to get that most freshest, yummy taste. But I do like, I don't mind butane or hexane as long as the ppm's lower than 80. And then, and my thing with the CO2, I just don't necessarily like it. And last but not least, for any of your listeners, very cheap, $600. You can go get the old school. Old school is once you have your way to be able to get your crude oil, run that crude through what would now be the vac oven. Through that vac oven, normally you would just hook up your pump, your purge pump, but instead go get it. You can get it from La Crosse International. And it's called a cold trap. You're going to go get that cold trap and you're going to put that in between your vac oven and your pump. What that's going to do, you guys, and what you didn't know, I bet you almost 90% of the people didn't know, that's all your terpenes there for $600. I just got yummy. You're throwing,
Wow.
you're throwing away what is the most expensive part of your extraction, and you didn't even know it. So what, for $600, I just got that, and you can go ahead and put that in. Now remember, standard crude oil, run it through your vac oven to purge out the solvents. Through that, put in between your vac oven, put in your cold trap, and then your vac pump, and a boom, away you go. And then, and it is a vial crack. It's up on top. You shoot it on the top. You lock it in. When you're done, and you pull it out, and you shave it with a knife, and you put it right into your jar, and away you go.
Wow.
That sounds
I
cool.
mean, I bet you that's how evolved we're getting those terps, Justin. Remember back in the day?
Oh yeah. He probably figured it out from this guy right here.
That's what I'm thinking.
No. It was Kenny from Trichrome Technology.
Right on.
He did that for La Crosse International, and Kenny Trichrome Technology. He writes for the cannabis business. He's one of their guys. He does a lot of work. Extremely knowledgeable, extremely talented guy, and has been probably the most featured individual in High Times history. Probably about 200 or 300 articles. Jeez. From like the early 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, and then now I don't think he does a lot with them. I think he does some other stuff.
Well, we're running out of time. We're actually out of time for today.
Right, guys.
I'm so glad you took time out to join us. Appreciate your knowledge and your friendship, and we just appreciate everything you do for the plant as well. And hopefully we can have you on again in the next month or so.
Vice versa. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you guys as well, getting the word out, educating and helping people. That's what it's all about. So thank you again, you guys. I really appreciate it.
All right.
No worries. Next time you're in Oregon, man, hit us up.
Yeah.
Come on by the studio.
I do drive through sometimes. I have my son's living a little kind of blast. I've got my son living out in Washington with all his sisters. So the family is together out there. So I do come out every once in a while that way.
Nice.
All right,
Okay,
guys.
good to see you. Good to see you. So much love
Thank
to you and the fam, and take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Blessings, guys. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Blessings to you too. Bret Bogue, King of Kush, right here on the old Stoneys. We appreciate him very much. And Matt, we didn't have to do much. I like Bret a lot because he knows what he's talking about.
That guy could almost have his own show. I'm telling you right now.
He could have his own show.
Wow. That was
He could give his own show, but he'd have to do it when he wants to do it. There would be no set time for the show because my brother's a busy man there. So, well, another great episode of the Old Stoneys podcast in the books. That's going to do it for us. So make sure you go to talkcastpdx.com. Check out all the past episodes. Watch for us on Apple Podcasts, Acast. Man, we're all over. Google Podcasts. It's just go check it out. And that's going to do it for us. All right. So, Matt, we'll chat at you later, okay?
Thanks, guys.
From us, myself, Justin McDonald, Matt Cristione, the Old Stoneys. And until next time, keep on smoking. BudTenderShirts.com has all the crazy fun and cool shirts you could possibly want. You want a cannabis-themed shirt? We got them for you. Want one about shrooms? Got that too. Want something that's just plain old stupidly funny? We have it all. BudTenderShirts.com. That's BudTenderShirts.com. Get a shirt and fun can go nuts. BudTenderShirts.com. And now we have socks. Buy it now. BudTenderShirts.com. That's BudTenderShirts.com. Fun can go nuts. Old Stoneys. Shroom shroom doom. It's BudTenderShirts.com. Buy a cool shirt today. BudTenderShirts.com. Help a stoner today. BudTenderShirts.com.